is important for environmental biologists to be able to keep track of the population and rate of population change of all the organisms in an ecological environment so that they can be accurately tracked and so that their effects on the environment can be accurately measured. Three main models of tracking population growth exist. First, the exponential model, second, the geometric model, and third, the logistical model. For the purposes of this video, we will be focusing on the geometric model of population growth. The exponential and geometric growth models both serve to illustrate how much the population grows within a given length of time, assuming a fixed rate of growth. The geometric model is for organisms that reproduce intermittently, or in other words, that have a specific breeding season. The exponential model is for organisms that can reproduce year-round.
It isn't practical to measure the population of a species all the time and over again. So we use geometric growth models to approximate how many of those things are there. An important thing to know about geometric growth, though, is that it increases at a fixed rate or ratio. And we represent this ratio by lambda. And lambda is actually equal to the population of one year over the population of the year before it. And that would give you the ratio in which the population increases. So we can actually model geometric growth. The population at any interval would be the initial population multiplied the rate of change, lambda, to the power of the number of intervals. So in this equation, n is the population number, t is the number of intervals, and lambda is the rate of change.
If you were to model geometric growth on a graph, it would look pretty much like an exponential graph because it's only taking into account the times when the population is growing. In reality, though, for species that have a specific breeding season, the population goes up very quickly during the breeding season and then slowly declines during the course of the rest of the year. This is because members of the species emigrate or, of course, die, and they're not being replenished during that time. So to model geometric growth accurately, it's important to take into account both the periods of growth and the periods of slow decline. So as an example, let's take a salmon population. Let's say that after a specific breeding period, 5 salmon are born. So the 5 salmon go off, they leave the breeding grounds, and by the time the next breeding season rolls around, there are only 4 left. They go to the breeding grounds, and let's say that in this case, that lambda, or the rate of growth, is that they double every interval, okay? So after those 4 salmon breed, 8 salmon leave the breeding grounds. When they come back, for example, there might be 6. In an idealized model, the mortality would actually also remain consistent, so the same percentage of salmon would die every year. But in reality, because all types of factors can affect both mortality and fertility, so both the rate of growth and the rate of decline, these numbers rarely stay consistent. But so you have 6 salmon that come back to the breeding grounds, and when they breed, they create 12 new salmon, and then those 12 also leave, and it goes on like that. It's important to note that the 3 models of population growth aren't contradictory but complementary. Exponential and geometric growth both serve to demonstrate what could happen in an environment that is completely limitless. It's just that geometric growth is for populations that reproduce intermittently, like most wildlife, and exponential growth is to model populations that can reproduce around the year, like all primates, including humans. Logistical growth happens after a period of exponential or geometric growth regardless, because there's no such thing as a completely unlimited environment, because eventually the environment will not be able to sustain more than a given number of organisms because it'll run out of things like food and water. This is called the carrying capacity of an environment, and that's where the graph of population growth sort of plateaus, which is modeled by the logistical growth model. It seems sometimes like there's no way that there could actually be a population that follows an exponential or geometric growth model just because it seems like it would go too high too quickly. But in reality, it does do that, except only up until it reaches the carrying capacity.